All right, let's jump right into this explainer and uncover one of the most gripping stories in ancient history. We're looking at the Book of Nehemiah today, and honestly, this text reads way less like dusty ancient history and much more like a high-stakes masterclass in crisis management, leadership, and just unyielding faith. We are talking about a totally ruined city, a massive construction project finished in record time against literally all odds, and a profound spiritual revival.
A cupbearer in a palace wept over a broken wall 800 miles away and changed the course of history. That quote just perfectly sets the stage. The year is 445 BC. The Persian Empire is at its absolute peak under King Artaxerxes I. And meanwhile, a very comfortable, high-ranking Jewish exile living in the luxurious Persian capital of Susa gets a devastating report from a guy named Hanani. The news? Jerusalem, the city of his ancestors, is essentially a defenseless pile of rubble. Its walls are totally broken down, its gates are burned, and its people are living in absolute trouble and shame. Hearing this news from 800 miles away just completely breaks him.
Section 1. The Cupbearer's Call. From the palace to the rubble. So let's look at how this unlikely hero went from the highest courts of global power to the dusty rubble of a broken city. Now, we have to understand that a cupbearer was no menial servant. This wasn't just a royal butler, okay? To be the cupbearer meant you were literally putting your life on the line every single day to taste the king's wine for poison. And because of that massive risk, you had the absolute personal trust and confidence of the monarch. Nehemiah had intimate access to the throne. He understood imperial administration inside and out. He basically had everything a person could possibly want in the ancient world. Extreme wealth, top-tier security, and massive influence. But instead of just shrugging off the plight of his people and enjoying his palace life, look at his response. He sat down, wept, and mourned. But, and this is key, he didn't just wallow in despair. For 4 whole months, from November all the way to April, he fasted and prayed. He praised God, confessed the sins of his nation, and strategically prepared to ask the king for help. The big takeaway here, before taking any physical action, before drawing up a single architectural blueprint, Nehemiah spent 4 months laying a solid foundation of prayer. It really shows us that true, world-changing leadership begins on its knees. So all that intense preparation leads up to this terrifying moment. Nehemiah is serving the king, and Artaxerxes notices that his cupbearer looks sad. Now, in the ancient Persian court, looking sad in front of the king was a huge deal. It was a dangerous offense that could actually cost you your life. When the king asks him what's wrong, Nehemiah is obviously struck with fear. But right in that fraction of a second, right in the middle of this high-stakes conversation, he shoots up what's often called an arrow prayer. Just a quick, urgent, silent plea to God. And then he boldly asks for permission to go rebuild Jerusalem. Amazingly, the king grants him absolutely everything: the time off, letters of safe passage, and even timber straight from the royal forest. Section 2. Faith meets hard work. Rebuilding amidst the rubble. Let's see what actually happens when Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem, armed with the king's resources, but staring down an incredibly daunting reality. So he gets there, conducts this secret 3-day night inspection just to assess the damage without tipping off his enemies, and then he rallies the people. He tells them, "Let us rise up and build." And chapter 3 gives us this fascinating look at his administrative genius. Because Nehemiah was a master delegator. He didn't just go out and hire professional masons. He enlisted everyone. We're talking high priests, goldsmiths, merchants, and even perfumers getting their hands dirty. Women, like Shallum's daughters, were out there building too. And brilliantly, he assigned many of the everyday people to repair the section of the wall directly opposite their own houses. Talk about a built-in incentive for quality control, right? You're going to make sure the wall in front of your living room is rock solid. But of course, the surrounding regional leaders, guys like Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, were furious that someone was actually trying to restore Jerusalem. They started with relentless mockery, which quickly escalated. And this situation brilliantly illustrates Nehemiah's core philosophy. When faced with this intense, terrifying opposition, look at his response. "We prayed to our God and set a guard day and night." Faith and action are not either or for Nehemiah, it's both and. He doesn't just pray and wait for a magical miracle, he prays and then he gets to work setting up security. Well, the mockery from their enemies soon turned into a very terrifying reality. The surrounding factions plotted a coordinated physical military attack against the builders to stop the wall from going up once and for all. Total fear gripped the Israelites. This was a massive problem that could have halted the entire project in its tracks.
Watch how Nehemiah adapts on the fly to this literal existential threat. He institutes this incredible half-and-half defense strategy. He physically arms his workers. Half the people stand guard with spears and shields, while the other half builds. Actually, it's crazier than that. Those carrying materials worked with a trowel in one hand and a weapon in the other. Imagine that scene. He also kept the trumpeter right by his side so that if an attack happened anywhere along that huge wall, the trumpet would sound and everyone would rally to that specific point. And they worked like this from dawn until the stars came out.
But just as the perimeter is finally secured, a devastating internal crisis erupts. Wealthy Jewish nobles were exploiting their poorer brethren, charging them heavy interest during a famine, and even forcing their children into slavery just to pay off debts. Nehemiah is furious. He steps in and publicly shuts down the exploitation immediately. And to model pure integrity himself, he actually refuses to take his own governor's allowance for 12 years, just to ease the financial burden on his people. Talk about walking the walk. Section 3. The 52-Day Miracle. Unstoppable Momentum. So despite this painful internal strife and the continuous external threats, the construction project hurtles toward an incredible, almost unbelievable climax. The enemies are getting desperate now, so they try a new tactic: assassination. 5 separate times, Sanballat and Geshem invite Nehemiah to meet them out at the plain of Ono, aiming to isolate him and kill him. And 5 times, Nehemiah sends back this legendary reply: "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down." He just completely refuses to be distracted from his mission. They try sending threatening open letters. They even hire a false prophet to try and lure him into the temple to ruin his reputation. But Nehemiah sees right through every single one of these schemes and just stays on the wall.
The result of this laser focus, this crazy combination of fierce prayer and relentless work, is staggering. The entire wall of Jerusalem is completely rebuilt in just 52 days. Think about that for a second. An accomplishment so fast, so astonishing, that when the surrounding nations heard about it, they were terrified. They realized that this wasn't just impressive human engineering. This work had absolutely been accomplished with the help of God.
Section 4. Revival at the Watergate. Rebuilding the people. Now, Nehemiah understood something really fundamental here. A strong wall around a spiritually dead city is completely useless. The wall was just phase 1. The real problem was the internal spiritual decay of the people themselves. And what's fascinating here is how the physical restoration of the city immediately triggered this massive spiritual hunger. All the people gather as one out in the square before the Watergate. They bring in Ezra the scribe, who stands up on a specially made wooden platform and simply reads the book of the law out loud, from early morning until midday. And the people stand there attentively for hours. When they hear the words, and as the Levites help explain what it all means, the people just begin to weep. The text was exposing exactly how far their society had fallen from God's ideals, and it hit them hard.
But Nehemiah and Ezra step in. They don't let the people just wallow in guilt and despair. They declare, "This day is holy to the Lord your God. Do not mourn or weep, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." They point them toward a scripture-fueled joy. They literally tell them to go celebrate, eat good food, drink, and share with those who have nothing. This pivots the whole mood into a massive, joyful celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, a festival that they had totally neglected for years.
A couple of days later, that emotional high translates into some really solid commitment. And the key takeaway here is that they didn't just feel bad about their past, they made very specific, practical, and measurable commitments to actually change their society moving forward. They draft up a written covenant, sealed by 84 leaders, binding themselves to obey God's laws. They pledge to stop intermarrying with pagan cultures that would draw them back into idolatry. They commit to strictly honoring the Sabbath day, and they promise to financially support the temple with their tithes. They literally put their names on the dotted line.
Now, if the book ended right there, it would be a perfect, neat little Hollywood ending. But actually, real life is messy. Chapter 13 shows us the very sobering reality of human nature. Nehemiah eventually leaves to go serve the Persian king again, and when he returns to Jerusalem about 12 years later, he finds that the community has slid right back into their old ways. Tobiah, literally one of the very enemies who tried to stop the wall from being built, has been given a VIP room right inside the temple. The Sabbath is being treated like just another business day, and the temple tithes have been totally abandoned. Nehemiah goes on an absolute tear. He literally throws Tobiah's furniture out into the street and physically locks the city gates on the Sabbath. It's this stark reminder that human reformation is never truly finished. It requires constant, active vigilance.
Section 5. The Prophetic Countdown. History and Prophecy Collide.
Let's zoom out and look at how Nehemiah's administrative work connects to some massive, mind-blowing prophetic implications.
Remember that very first meeting with King Artaxerxes? That decree in 445 BC actually triggered a famous countdown found over in the Book of Daniel. Daniel had prophesied a timeline of 69 prophetic weeks, which scholars have calculated out to equal 483 years. Amazingly, if you count forward from that exact decree given to Nehemiah, it lands us precisely on the day of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem in AD 33. I mean, think about that. Nehemiah wasn't just building a physical wall, he was literally setting a divine prophetic clock into motion.
So, as we wrap up this explainer on the incredible Book of Nehemiah, we're left with this powerful legacy of prayer, grit, and incredible administrative brilliance. But Nehemiah also leaves us with a really provocative challenge. You see, he rebuilt those massive walls in just 52 days, but he spent years trying to reform the hearts of the people, only to watch them slide back the minute he left. It forces us to ask ourselves a tough question. In our own lives, in our businesses, and in our communities, are we just totally focused on building physical walls and outward success? Or are we doing the hard, continuous work of addressing the internal, spiritual, and moral foundations that truly hold everything together?